So I'm going to be talking today about processing fluid samples and basic cytomorphology. During the course of this presentation, there are going to be a few polls and a few comments which you all will have to enter as attendees. Currently, I see that there are about 26 people who have joined the event. About 28 only. Of today's seminar is to teach extremely junior people in the department, those who are 6 months to 1 year. However, I would have liked to have some of the responses from more senior residents when it comes to comment section. So there are going to be two sections. One is the poll section. So there are 12 cases for which I will hold polls. In the poll, you have to click the answer which you think appropriate. And when I ask for the results of the polls to show, it will all show up in your mobile device or your computer device as the answer to what the polls you all thought the answer to the question was. Fluids we get in cytology look like this. So they are variable. They can be clear fluids like this. Very clear fluids, whether it is yellow or very light in color, do not yield a rich cell button. So if the fluid is so clear looking as this, then you need to go for a cytospin directly. So when do you use a cytospin in a fluid? When it is small in quantity like a CSF or small quantity of ascites which has been sent by a ultrasound guided tap. Clear fluids of any sort which do not yield a cell button, or if there is no button after the centrifuge is initially tried and therefore you know that there is no button and therefore you do a direct cytospin. Whereas fluids which look like this, which are much more heavy, turbid, and they are not transparent but translucent, for those fluids you use a centrifuge smear. That means that all protein rich, turbid and light hemorrhagic fluids undergo a centrifuging, after which 1 to 2 pap slates, 1 mgg and 1 cell block is prepared from every case. So you can see that the kind of turbidity can be variable. It can be straw colored like this, or it can be white colored like this. So a white colored fluid like this would imply that this is a chylous or rich in lymphocyte content or cellular content. If it is pus like, then you know it is rich in neutrophil content. So an example of a pus rich fluid would be something like this. So I request all of you to please take the poll which I am putting online right now. So the question for you is, what does this arrow show? So when you are talking about effusions, we are talking about pericardial, pleural and peritoneal fluids, which when they collect beyond around 30 to 40 ml start presenting as ascites, and these fluids are tapped, subsequent to which you need to look for cytology. By and large, our cytology is meant for looking for malignancy. However, a lot of fluids get tapped for therapeutic reasons, at which point, instead of throwing it away, they do send it to our lab a number of times. A number of times we do get surprise diagnosis like a hidden carcinoma, or you might get a parasite like microfilaria, etc. So, 5-year-old male who has a pleural effusion, which is predominantly showing lymphocytes like this. So, and in the previous case, a substantial number of people thought that it was reactive mesothelial cells. It was not reactive. So a reactive mesothelial cell requires that the changes of reactive nuclear atypia should be present. So reactive nuclear atypia is indicated by prominent nucleoli. In the current poll, case 2, I have ended the poll, but the result has not been displayed. I think it has not been enabled. Display polls results at the end of end poll needed to be enabled, but number of 66% thought this is tuberculosis, 26% thought it is chylous effusion. So the answer to this is that it could be both. We do not know right now whether this is predominant of lymphocytes is because of tuberculosis or Kyle's effusion. Now it's not a transudate, which was one of the answers which is given. A transudate is typically very low in the number of lymphocytes which are there, and transudates require that there should be, like, rarely a lymphocyte is there, and the report which we typically write for that is occasional lymphocyte seen. Tuberculosis typically does not cause a reactive mesothelial proliferation. Instead, numerous lymphocytes are shed into the fluid. This might be because of, if at all granulomas are there, they might line the pleural cavity, or if they're inside the lung, they still secrete cytokines which attract lymphocytes, which then exude out into the pleural cavity, and therefore you get that kind of a hemorrhagic effusions. Now, what are hemorrhagic effusions? For all practical purposes, you should think of only two things if it is a pleural fluid which is hemorrhagic, that is tuberculosis or malignancy. If it is a pericardial fluid, almost 99% of pericardial effusions are going to turn out to be hemorrhagic. Ascitic fluids, on the other hand, are rarely hemorrhagic. So when you have a hemorrhagic effusion, you need to lyse the RBCs. We prefer to use Cytolite or Cytorich to lyse the RBCs because these contain alcoholic solvents which successfully lyse the RBCs. Subsequent to that, you make a centrifuge sphere and a cell block. So this is the Cytolite solution, which is a part of Hologic or thin prep liquid-based cytology system, but we use it in routine also. This is the Cytorich fluid, which is one of the fluids which is used in the SurePath system. Both of them are equally efficacious. Now, there are two ways in which a cell block is prepared. The common way, which is used in many laboratories but not ours, is to use the thrombin clot method. So in that, what you do is you take the fluid, you centrifuge it to get a pellet. Subsequent to that, you add plasma, clot it using thrombin or thromboplastin, whichever is convenient for you. After it clots, you process the clot. Now, to do this successfully, you need to have multiple steps of centrifugation because commonly used fixatives like formalin or alcohol do inhibit the formation of clot by thromboplastin. They lyse the clot, and therefore it becomes sometimes difficult to get good quality clots. It is a time consuming time. Instead of that, what we do for cell blocks, which all of you should know, is the sedimentation method. In sedimentation, you take 50 ml centrifuge tube, centrifuge it till the button is big, prepare a direct smear. The direct smear is subjected to an acetic acid rinse so that direct smear can be evaluated. This gives you an idea of the cellularity. Then you prepare a cell block. The cell block, if it is hemorrhagic, if you add Cytolite, that will successfully hemolyze all the RBC. After that, you centrifuge, decant, vortex, transfer to the Eppendorf tube now. So the deposit put in Eppendorf tube is then centrifuged. The formalin is directly added to the Eppendorf tube. Again, you centrifuge, and then you can process it in the filter paper, as you can see in the subsequent slides. So if you look at this, here you have a hemorrhagic fluid. We put it into a Falcon tube 50 ml. Solution was like this. We centrifuged it. We got a button which included most of the RBCs, decanted it. Then we resuspended it on a vortex mixer. Then you prepared a direct smear which goes for this acetic acid rinse. The remaining of the pellet is again mixed with the Cytolite. This is the Cytolite. Centrifuge it. It has lysed, but there's a button. Throw away the supernatant. Vortex it. Transfer the button into the Eppendorf tube. Then this is the Eppendorf tube. Centrifuge it, and now this is the Cytorich fluid, and this is the cell button. You can see the cell button. In any fluid, the cell button is almost, unless it's a very transparent kind of a liquid, you will get a cell button. It is easy to make cell blocks from acetic fluids and other effusion cytology. You transfer it into the Eppendorf tube like this. Now it is clear. You put formalin into it, and subsequently, once it is fully fixed, you take it out. For taking out, you cut the tip. So that means you throw the supernatant, which was the formalin. You took a blade and you cut the tip of the centrifuge tube. The tip has come here. Now again the plastic is cut in 90 degrees to that, and the cell pellet which was there has come out of the Eppendorf tube. And now it is directly put into a capsule, and these are the various capsules, and you can see there is a varying size of cell button from these fluids. So subsequent to that, it undergoes all the processing which is there. So you can see each time you process it, you can this is just details of the way the cutting and the putting in the cassettes is done. Ultimately, whatever comes out of the tube is put into the what do you call it, the tissue cassette, and it is processed as it is normally done. So reactive mesothelial cells typically show larger nuclei. So this is just a mesothelial cell. This mesothelial cell has a window in between it. This mesothelial cell is coming in a small group, although there are some cell borders assigned, it's almost like a giant cell. These are mostly histiocytes. Now it is very difficult for any individual cell to say whether this is a histiocyte or whether this is a reactive mesothelial cell, but by and large, if it looks like a histiocyte, it is a histiocyte. These, on the other hand, are mesothelial cells. They have a dense cytoplasm. Here you can see the varying kinds of mesothelial cell morphology. They can have multinucleated giant cells. You can have this kind of morule formation. You can get this lazy skirt appearance, or you can get a two-tone cytoplasm. That means that there is a dense cytoplasm close to the nucleus and a frayed cytoplasm away from the nucleus, which is because of the microvilli which are put out by the mesothelial cells. You can get, especially in children, you get these flower-shaped nuclei. These are just normal mesothelial cell sheets. Sometimes mesothelial cells can have reactive changes, so nucleus is big with prominent nucleoli, and there may be eccentric placement because these cells secrete hyaluronic acid, and they may look, especially after degeneration, like this. Should not be mistaken for a signet ring cell. This also is a mesothelial cell, which the nucleus is normal. So these are degenerative vacuoles. You can see how these two cells are attached to each other. So this is ascites, the difference between a histiocyte and a mesothelial cell. So mesothelial cells may exfoliate as cohesive groups, round to oval nuclei, centrally placed nucleus, nuclear margin not close to cell border, narrow rim of denser cytoplasm due to numerous long center microvilli in the peripheral part. And they have well-defined cell borders with blebs, whereas histiocytes have a ill-defined, loosely cohesive groups, irregular outlines. They have a reniform nucleus, peripheral. So this part is a mesothelial cell, this part is the histiocyte. This is a cluster of histiocytes. They have reniform nuclei, not round. Mesothelial cells are predominantly round nuclei. The nucleus of a histiocyte is eccentric or peripheral. The nuclear margin is close to the cell border, and it has ill-defined cell borders, unlike the mesothelial cell. However, a degenerated mesothelial cell can start looking like a histiocyte. So you have to take this poll, and let's see what you tell. So what percentage of the cell block are histiocytes is the question. So here we have done a cell block. This is a very richly cellular cell block, and you can see there are lots of cells. Some of the cells are coming grouped together like this. They look like epithelial cells. Some of these are red blood cells, which are present here and there. Some of these are small cells, and some are intermediate to medium-sized cells, which are lying in between all of these cells. So the question is, what are the cells which are present here? Around 55% of you feel that, around 66% feel that around half the cells here are histiocytes. That is 50% of all cells here are histiocytes. That's what you all felt. So let us see the next slide. And what we find is that this is the immunohistochemistry. So all the epithelial cells which were there, they are positive for calretinin. These only were the mesothelial cells. So the ones which are coming in group are densely stained. The ones which are coming loosely, hardly one or two of them are calretinin positive. CD68, between 50 to 75% of all the cells here were CD68 positive. If you do a WT1, now WT1 is a very dicey kind of a stain. It is inconstantly positive in normal and reactive mesothelial cells. So normal mesothelial cells less positive, reactive mesothelial cells slightly more positive, whereas adenocarcinoma of the serous type arising from ovary is strongly WT1 positive. So here the WT1 is less staining than the calretinin is. So this is a negative pleural fluid, which despite the presence of these groups, these are reactive mesothelial cell group, these cells are all histiocytes and lymphocytes. When you do a cell block, you find that these are all the reactive cells which are present, and these are the lymphocytes and histiocytes. If you do the calretinin will give you a, like an egg, what do you call that egg? Poached egg kind of an appearance, in which you have a central nucleus is also stained, the cytoplasm is also stained, and then there is a light area in between like this. CD68 stains around half of these, that means they are all histiocytes. WT1 staining much less, occasional cell here and there only is coming positive. This was a pleural effusion, and we did a TTF1 because we thought it could be a carcinoma, which was negative. So this is what a nice reactive mesothelial cell looks like. It has dense cytoplasm, it has prominent nucleolus, and it has this kind of wavy kind of cytoplasmic borders. This cytoplasmic clasping which you are seeing is very characteristic. And if you have a group, you have windows between the cells. This part of it is what is called as a mixed cell cluster. In a mixed cell cluster, you have histiocytes, lymphocytes, and reactive mesothelial cells all caught up together to form a cluster. Typically, these mixed cell clusters are because of cells sticking to each other in the fluid, and when you spread it on the slide, they will be flat. They are lying flat on the slide. They are not three-dimensional in shape. So this is another one, Giemsa-Slate smear, showing you reactive mesothelial cells and what they look like. On Giemsa, they typically have very blue cytoplasm like this. So they have very blue cytoplasm, and the cell size difference between the histiocyte and the mesothelial cell becomes more accentuated because of that. So here we have other kinds of appearance on MGG. A pseudo signet ring appearance is a very common occurrence, but despite that, I must tell you that a pseudo signet ring appearance should always be kept as a DD with a signet ring size cell type of carcinoma, and you must actively rule it out, because if you start disregarding 9 out of 10 cases or pseudo signet ring, but that one case in which it is true signet, you will end up calling and missing a blatant adenocarcinoma. And that's all. That's something we all learn very early on in our career, after the first mistake we make typically, or if our teachers drilled it into our head when we were junior or senior resident. So here at higher power, you can see what the reactive mesothelial cells look like. These are the cell junctions on Giemsa, and the size difference between histiocyte and reactive mesothelial cell is more accentuated. This would be the size of the histiocyte. They don't have that much cytoplasm like here. This would be a histiocyte. This is a clustering, pseudo clustering, or a mixed cell cluster, which is benign in nature. So this is a very common appearance. Neutrophils, lymphocytes, histiocytes, and almost none of these clusters actually have that many of mesothelial cell. If you do markers, maybe 1 or 2 like this will come positive for mesothelial cell. Almost all of these will be histiocytes only. So here let us start a poll. This is case 4. And in this poll, you can give your answer. What do you think is the diagnosis here? So here we have a group of cells which are present. This group is having protruding borders. But if you look closely, what you find is that a lot of these borders are rimmed with cytoplasm. So although the nucleus is also bulging, but they are not so much nuclear bulging as whole cell is bulging. This is better appreciated in this slide at higher power, where you can see that these are actually cells which are clasping these together, and the bulge is not complete. Best appreciated on this. So here you can see that there is degenerative vacuolation of the cytoplasm, and nuclei don't look that atypical. The nuclei look normal, but there is bulging and group formation. Now this is a reactive mesothelial cell. So none of the above was the correct answer. 68% of you felt it was an adenocarcinoma. So that's the reason why this slide was put, because it is very easy for you to miss a reactive mesothelial cell cluster and call it an adenocarcinoma. So reactive mesothelial balls are also called morulae. So these morulae can look like adenocarcinoma. They acquire a three-dimensionality which you don't get with the normal mesothelial cells. This is another ascites. This also has a pole. So let's start the poll. This is case 5. And you have this. What is your diagnosis? What does it show? It shows a PAP in which there is a group of cells. This cytoplasm is bulging out. So it is a very small group. Only 1 or 2 groups like this were there. On GIMSA also you can see it is bulging out here, little more of nuclear bulge, but still looks more like a cytoplasmic bulge. Here also you can see. So if there are very few groups like this, on morphology alone you will say that this is like inconclusive. It could be a tumor, it could not be a tumor. In the previous case also probably an inconclusive would have been a correct response, because those morulae can indicate sometimes your mesothelioma. So a lot of people have made it ovarian adenocarcinoma. Brilliant, you people are so fast. 92% make it ovarian adenocarcinoma, and the reason for that is because we did the cell block. So we have a cell block in which some groups are there. Now when you went under high power, these nuclei were atypical. I have not captured that. But you can see here, P53 is very strongly positive. P53 coming strongly positive is important. If it is weakly positive, it indicates benign. So if few nuclei are positive, few nuclei are negative, that's like a wild type P53 expression varying from cell to cell indicates benign. If it is completely negative or completely positive, it indicates like a malignancy. And WT1 is strongly positive. So both of these markers are very dicey markers. So we don't have good positive markers for ovarian adenocarcinoma on cell block, although ovarian adenocarcinoma is the most important of the diagnosis we get in cytology. But if you use a combination of P53 and WT1, it helps you with the cell block morphology to correctly identify a majority of the cytology samples which previously would go as inconclusive. So an inconclusive diagnosis on morphology of cytology smears can turn positive if you do cell block with IHC in majority of cases, but sometimes it is vice versa. Sometimes your P53 and WT1 is neither here nor there. Then you go back to not the cell block, but you go back to the cytomorphology, and with the help of that you can make out whether it is benign or malignant. So ovarian adenocarcinomas typically show strong WT1 like this, which you can see, strong P53 like this, which you can see, and cell blocks typically are rich, but they can show you an admixture. So the groups of cells will come like this. So please remember to note some of the finer details of morphology of carcinoma versus morphology of mesothelial cells. Mesothelial cells can also come in cluster. Carcinoma can also come in cluster, but carcinoma will have gland-like pattern. that pattern is just like histology. And so when you do cell block of acidic fluid, you convert cytology into histology, and it becomes easier for many people to make diagnosis. So if you look at the cytology here, it was very bland looking. Nuclei were not atypical. It was just forming small clusters like this. This case we would have gone inconclusive, but because we had markers and cell block morphology, we were able to go positive on this. This is acidic fluid ovarian adenocarcinoma again. On the PAP and MGG, cellularity low, predominantly inflammatory and reactive mesothelial and histiocytic population, no fragment C. So normally in cytology, we would have gone negative, but when we did the cell block, we found some fragments. These were few fragments. So cell block frequently picks up small fragments which can get missed in the cytology smear formation. And when we did the P53 and WT1, very strongly positive inside these epithelial atypical fragments, you can make out the gland formation here. It will always come very nicely in the cell block. So in one look, you can make it positive for carcinoma, whereas you would have gone negative if you did only cytology. So here we have a poll. So let's have a poll of case 6, which is what is your diagnosis? So here we have a poll in which the PAP shows nothing. It is just few cells. It's not even cellular. It's almost like an unsat. The cell block had one fragment like this. So it was acidic fluid having one fragment like this. But some markers have been done, and a lot of you, some of them have called it reactive mesothelial cells 25%, which has reduced to 16% because some people, or 75%, called it as a adenocarcinoma colon. Why? Because a marker has come positive. So the marker is CDX2 coming positive. Now CDX2, you must remember, is a dicey marker. It doesn't always stain, or it doesn't stain all cells. BER-AP4, another example of a dicey marker. It doesn't stain all nuclei, and it doesn't consistently come positive. But combination of both of them coming with this morphology, which is of glandular epithelial fragments lying in acidic fluid, you can go positive. So this is another case where a negative cytology got converted into positive because of the cell block. So here again we need a poll. So let's start the case 7 poll. Which is showing, what does it show? Here we have an MGG which is showing reasonable amount of cellularity, a cell block which is fairly rich in cellularity, a PAP smear which shows occasional cells which have some kind of pigment inside their cytoplasm. So this pigment is present. Other than that, you are not really seeing anything. So these are all histiocytes. These are also all histiocytes. And when you do CD68, this proves it. All of these are histiocytes. If you do calretinine, a few of them are having this poached egg appearance and is positive. So a few of the cell block cells were mesothelial cells, and an iron stain is positive. So a lot of people thought it is endometriosis, which is the right answer. And a lot of people, that is 25%, thought it's mesothelioma. This is not a mesothelioma. Mesothelioma will typically have module. Let's go to this case 8. Now here is a pericardial fluid. This requires another poll. So pericardial fluids tend to come in 3 types. Pericardial fluid can have a predominantly hemorrhagic fluid in which there are no cells. This is the most common pattern. The second less common pattern is when you have predominantly an acute inflammatory exudate. But although it is acute inflammatory exudate, the commonest diagnosis turns out to be tuberculosis. So you get a tubercular pericarditis. So in the lung, that is in the not lung, the pleural effusion, you saw that tuberculosis predominantly comes as a effusion with lymphocytes. When it comes to pericardium, tuberculosis comes as an effusion with predominantly neutrophils, empyema. Sometimes in lung also, especially if you have a bronchopleural fistula, you can get a subpulmonic empyema-like presentation in tuberculosis also. So sometimes they may ask for AFB to be done. If predominantly lymphocyte is coming in the pleural effusion, AFB will rarely come. But if it is an empyema-like picture, the chances are that some kind of a cavity inside the lung is communicating with a bronchopleural fistula into the effusion cavity, that is a pleural cavity, and is discharging pus rich in AFB into the pleural cavity, in which case AFB can come positive. Similarly, if people ask for AFB in a pericardial effusion, if predominantly a pus-like material has come, you can do AFB, it might come positive. So 100% of the people here thought it was adenocarcinoma lung, and if we only had cytology, we would have missed it because there were no fragments. The fragment, single fragment or 2-3 fragments came only in the cell block. In the cell block, we had these fragments, they had nuclear atypia, but see the arrangement of cells. So adenocarcinoma has multiple different types of arrangement. One of the ways that an adenocarcinoma sheds is if it is a normal adenocarcinoma which is shed into the fluid. The other is if an adenocarcinoma cell is growing inside an effusion as a ball. So the ball grows upon itself, in which case it can happen that it might acquire some morulae-like features. And those balls are actually floating tumor growing by imbibition of nutrients from the ascitic or pleural or pericardial effusion. So their morphology is different. They will have, however, an anatomical border like this. So this is how cells grow inside an effusion. Unlike a mesothelioma, which has other features, which grows in the form of morulae or mulberry or grape-like clusters. Mulberry is the correct word, or gooseberry. So TTF1 strongly positive, known case of adenocarcinoma lung, the diagnosis is made. Let us go to the next slide, which is a pleural fluid, which also required a Paul. Oops, somebody else has started the poll, I think. Thank you, whoever started it. And here the question is, what is your diagnosis? So Pap stain is showing some fragments. They are coming 3-dimensional clusters. Any 3-dimensional cluster, whether it is Giemsa or Pap. In Giemsa, a 3-dimensional cluster is made because you can't see the nuclei above and below. Although it has been flattened, the nuclei overlap each other and form a dense mass-like ball, unlike a flat sheet. It did a cell block and it was rich in cellularity, very rich in cellularity. You did a calretinine and it was totally negative. You did a CK7. Now CK7 comes positive in mesothelial cells. So CK7 is a very difficult marker for you to use. Okay, and if only CK7 comes, calretinine is a fairly reliable marker on cell block. So CK7 positive, calretinine negative, you have a thinking that it could be a carcinoma. WT1 is only focally positive like this. P53 is strongly positive. So P53 coming positive like this indicates that this is a malignant tumor. But WT1 only weakly positive. And I think here it has not been consistent for ovarian carcinoma. Although a majority, 72% thought it was ovarian adenocarcinoma, 16% thought adenocarcinoma. So because it's pleural fluid, TTF1 is negative. So Here we have a carcinoma with unknown primary. On morphology of cytology, you would have gone inconclusive. On cell block and P53, you know for sure that this is malignant pattern because P53 is strongly positive. This is not the wild type positive. But most of the positive markers we would like to see, that is WT1 coming positive strongly in an ovarian adenocarcinoma, TTF1 coming positive strongly, CK7 is positive, so that could be still ovarian or it could be a GI malignancy. So a number of carcinomas continue to remain in the differential diagnosis. In such a situation, it is better to investigate with radiology. So you go positive and ask for a radiological investigation rather than do more and more immunohistochemistry trying to find, because no, every carcinoma is not going to come 100% strongly positive for a particular type. And subtyping may not always be possible. So here we again require a poll. So I would request somebody to start the poll if they are online. This is for case 10. So here we have a pleural fluid. Okay, it got started, case 10. So here we have a pleural effusion. And the question is, what is your diagnosis? Pleural effusion in which you are getting a few clusters of epithelial cells. They look epithelial, but when you go down, you find that they look more like mesothelial cells. Nuclear not very atypical, cytoplasm abundant, bulging out like this. So few epithelial fragments here, one epithelial. But on morphology, I would have gone negative. So this looks like reactive mesothelial cells is what I would have called it. That's what 75% of you thought. 20% thought it's none of the above in the pleural effusion. Now you must remember that pleural effusions are one of the most important situations where you get a lot of reactive mesothelial cells. So if you rank pericardial, pleural, and ascitic fluid in order of frequency, pericardial has the most bizarre looking atypical reactive mesothelial proliferations, followed by pleural and rarely in the ascites. But having said that, if you have reactive mesothelial cells in a pleural effusion, please look for a carcinoma, because one of the most important things which elicit a pleural reactive mesothelial proliferation is a carcinoma. So both will be present together. So because the two commonest causes of pleural effusion are tuberculosis and malignancy, and tuberculosis does not elicit a reactive mesothelial cell, presence of reactive mesothelial cells in pleural fluid, you should look for a malignancy. So on morphology, I would have thought these look reactive, but now that we have cell block, so we do the cell block and we find that predominantly it is like reactive mesothelial cells. On morphology of this, you find that a few look like there are clusters which could still be reactive mesothelial clusters. So on cell block morphology also, you are not sure. Now they don't look like the kind of gland formation which you normally use in a what do you call it, in a positive diagnosis of a cell block. But when you do the TTF1, you found that a few of these, but not all of these, are positive for TTF1, which means that this is adenocarcinoma. So a marker is the only way to differentiate between benign and malignant sometimes. And here we went all the way from negative on cytology, PAP, GIMSA, and cell block to positive because the IHC marker was in favor of a malignancy. And then you have to fit it with the clinical histology. Then we have here case 11 poll, where we have to tell what is your diagnosis. So let me start the poll. The poll has been started for you. Now here we have things which look abnormal. If it looks abnormal, which means that there are these abnormal clusters which are present. This is the PAP and this is the GIMSA. Now almost all of you have called it metastatic adenocarcinoma. But markers are not fitting. It's a pleural fluid. CK7 is also not very strongly positive. TDA1 is negative. Then this is also the cell block morphology where these atypical fragments are present. So these are acini, and this higher power is actually P53. But if you look at the P53, the P53 is totally negative. So here, because the P53 is negative, it makes it abnormal, and therefore this is a carcinoma. It has lost the P53. The P53 is a tumor suppressor gene which is typically lost. Normally inactivated P53 is still produced in high quantity, the abnormal mutated P53, and therefore it detects positive on IHC. But if you do, in certain cases, P53 can come negative also. So this is case 12, which is a pleural effusion. And here also there is a poll as to what is your diagnosis. Now here is one situation where predominantly it is a hemorrhagic effusion. So in a predominantly hemorrhagic effusion, you don't find too many cells. But because we lysed the RBC and therefore we made the cell block with lysed RBC, the cellularity has increased. And here we are having these neutrophils, lymphocytes, and few epithelial clusters which are like this. And the question comes, what is the diagnosis? So the poll didn't start. Here again, it's a TTF1 coming positive in a few cells. So I remember I told you hemorrhagic pleural fluids in which you have a few fragments can be missed on morphology, but cell block picks it up, and it is an important addition to cytology. So here you have to write your diagnosis in comments. So try to write what you think it is. So here we have a very cellular pleural fluid. I have not given you the age, but let me give you the age. It's 20 years old. There is lymphoid cells. These lymphoid cells look little immature. They have some blue cytoplasm and they have a blast-like appearance. If you look at this, these are also lymphoid cells, but they look immature on the PAP stain. If you did the cell block, here you have immature lymphoid cells coming like this. And if you do a CD3, you find that the CD3 is staining very few of these. CD20 is staining majority of cells, and TDT is negative. So has anybody managed to write the diagnosis in comments is what we are waiting for. In the meantime, let me go to the next slide. Peritoneal washings are typically clear fluids if it is done well. But if it is not done well, if the surgeon has created a lot of hemorrhage, you should not ideally create hemorrhage inside a peritoneum because it causes more adhesions. But if they have created, you can get a hemorrhagic and bloody fluid. Now for peritoneal washing, we prepare centrifuge smears. We can prepare a cell block. Sometimes occasional tumor cells can come in the cell block. So every peritoneal washing requires a cell block also. This is what the mesothelial sheets look like. In one word, it's sheets. So mesothelial cells which are not reactive come with these typical windows. So they have been freshly exsanguinated or not exsanguinated, shed by the gloved finger moving over the peritoneum. And these sheets have these cell junctions, spot junctions attaching and clear space in between producing windows. So these are the windows. So windows are the most important thing, which is what you see in shed peritoneal smears also. And if you see the next slide, here this is the same thing under GIMSA. This is a mesothelial sheet. Now this sheet, if you put in a cell block, it will look bizarre like this. It will get curled up into concentric, peculiar, lamellated, round things like this. And because this is the transverse section. So you should not be worried or you should not get disconcerted by the kind of morphology a cell block of a peritoneal washing will look like. Adenocarcinoma cell will look very different from this. So we will come to the end of this because the remainder required people to come on board and then do. So I slowed my presentation down, but knowing that this this segment was not going to happen. So it is now 12:53. Can we get some comments which came in the comment section? Let's look at the chat. Priyanka said lymphoblastic not. Somebody said non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It is B cell positive. So obviously it is a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So is it Burkitt or is it